Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are joined today by our good friend DejaBrew from Oasis Trading Group. We've recently had the pleasure of adding his Wick Sniper Indicator to the TrendSpider platform, and he's here with us now to go through how he uses the indicator, what it's showing us, and all that good stuff. So, DejaBrew, man, thank you so much for being here. I'm anxious to
Yeah,
learn about this indicator.
appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get started. So I'm going to start off here with Bitcoin on the daily. So if you guys are familiar with a Bollinger Band, it's a very common indicator. It basically measures standard deviations from an average. And I used to use that indicator a lot in my trading when I first started, but I realized that it was kind of laggy and it wasn't as clean on the highs and lows as I wanted it to be. So I went from there and I kind of built the Wick Sniper, thinking about using like ATR, which is another volatility indicator that basically uses an average true range of a certain amount of candles, and it gives you an idea of what the market volatility is. So basically, what the Wick Sniper does is it takes a more complicated version of ATR and applies that to an average, and it gives you these high and low bands from that average. So these bands are basically levels that where price should be trading inside of to be healthy. If it trades outside the upper band, it is unhealthy to the upside. If it trades outside the lower band, it is unhealthy to the downside. So we can actually see on the Bitcoin daily here that we're actually trading below the lower band for the past 3 days. And this basically means that with the current ATR, with the current volatility of the market, it should not be trading this low. It should actually be trading, let's see, around 22,000 or higher. So it's about $300 below the lower band, kind of indicating that we should either be going sideways here or seeing a pop up inside that lower band. Now, it can do a few things here where it will ride the lower band or will ride the upper band, and that can be a time where price is trending very heavily. So if we look at back here towards the beginning of May, Bitcoin was kind of riding the lower band down, and then it gave you that consolidation back inside the lower band after you stayed outside of it for too long. So it can do that where it kind of rides the band, but it's not heavily outside of it. And that's where you want to try to take the trending trades. You don't want to take the ranging trades. But if you do see prices consolidating very heavily and it starts to wick into the upper or lower bands, then it's basically telling you that's a good selling point on the high end or a good buying point on the low end. Hence why we call it the wick sniper. You're typically going to get wicks in those areas. Are there some tickers that you wanted to take a look at today? We can go through them.
Yeah, let's look at just kind of the major ones. We'll look at SPY and the Qs maybe.
Yeah, let's take a look at SPY. So this indicator was actually built to be traded on a 15 minute. It works on all time frames, but when I was fully back testing it, fully live testing it, it was built to be traded on a lower time frame, somewhere around the 15 to 30. So we'll take a look at the 15 here on SPY, and then we'll also look at the daily to see kind of what the price difference will be and the different price action that you get with this indicator. So we actually had a really good example of the indicator back here when you gap down. So the gaps are going to be a little difficult with the indicator because it doesn't calculate the gaps properly. But what it basically will tell you is based on the price action before the gap, this is where that healthy price action should be. So when you're consolidating outside that lower band, you should be trading back inside that band. So in this case, when that consolidation went on for a good, let's say 3 to 10 bars here, the band started to level out around 374. So basically what it was telling you is price should be above 374, but it should be below 382. And that's exactly where price started to consolidate after that little gap. So you started to hover inside that zone. And then once it had some price action down here outside the gap, we can see that it gave you that very steady lower band and that very steady upper band. And when price bounced off that lower band, you had a couple of mean reversion opportunities. One was around here at 1530, and then one was around here at 1500 around the June 14th. And then same thing here. We saw a gap up. It was trading outside the band. So this is seen as unhealthy. And we pulled back into the band, giving you that healthy consolidation. Now, funny enough, we actually have a very volatile meeting today. We have the FOMC meeting, which typically gives you these massive wicks in both directions, these massive candles kind of breaking the range. But the Wick Sniper did a fantastic job of trading the FOMC. You had the lower band holding beautifully on those 3 15-minute candles there. And then you had 1 2 3 4 candles up here holding the upper band. So basically, if you were going into the FOMC and you were looking to trade this price action, you would have told yourself, okay, I don't want to be a buyer really above this line here, and I don't want to be a seller below this line here. And if you followed that, you should not have sold the bottom and you should not have bought the top. So it helped you kind of trade the healthy price action of today. Now, if we go to the daily on SPY here, we can see we're kind of getting very similar price action. So right here is actually where it's doing that pattern that I talked about earlier, where it's kind of riding the lower band, but every time it gets below it, it kind of has a pop back into the band because this is where the healthy value is being found. So all these days here that was testing below the band, we should have been a buyer looking for a small consolidation or a small bounce back into value. Now, one thing you can do, I know a lot of traders love to use moving averages. You can use an ADMA or some kind of short-term moving average to kind of help you out when it's riding the band like this, just to kind of see where the aggressive traders are following that trend. So like right here, the ADMA kind of shows you that if we bought down here below the band, we could target the ADMA because that's where the aggressive sellers are. Now, if we hide that for a second, we can see that today's price action is actually testing the lower band of the Wick Sniper. So it was basically telling you to be a buyer below 375. So any price below 375 was not a healthy price. There was not any value below that level. So price is starting to bounce off that lower band. Now we can also take a look at Qs here really quickly. It's going to be very similar to SPY. But basically the same thing here for Qs. You're riding the lower band here. So you're in a very strong downtrend, but it's kind of maintaining that healthy price action. Every time it leaves the band, you have a consolidation or a relief bounce. So you would be looking to be a buyer around that lower Wick Sniper. And then same thing here. We had the gap down. The gap down was very unhealthy. And then we are consolidating back inside what is seen as healthy price, which in this case would be anywhere from 275 all the way up to 312. Now, because the volatility is so high, it is going to give you that wide band. So when volatility is higher, the Wick Sniper will be wider.
Gotcha. What is your favorite way to utilize this indicator?
So I typically like to use it when I am seeing a strong range start forming. So it's actually doing that setup kind of here on SPY and Qs. If we go back to SPY, we can see on the daily, we've kind of put in a strong low here and then we put in a strong high. So it's starting to form kind of an accumulation after you entered this downtrend. So once I see that low and the high of the range start to form, I will pay a lot of attention to where the bands are located. And I'll try my best to either be a buyer outside the lower band or at least very close to the lower band. And I'll try to be a seller close to the upper band and outside of the upper band.
Got it. Do you look for any sort of confirmation, like candle wise? Is there a time frame that you're looking for, or are you like how exactly do you judge if price action is outside of the band? As we've kind of, or as you've demonstrated, it can stay
Mhm,
outside of that band for a handful of candles. How do you make the
mhm.
assessment that it's time to enter in?
So that would be kind of candlestick theory. So I like to look for the wicks, obviously, hence the name. I like looking for very long bottom wicks if it's trading around the lower band. I like looking for very long top wicks if it's trading around the upper band, that sort of thing. Basically, my favorite bottoming candles would be something like a tweezer bottom when two wicks are kind of matching up. If it has a dragonfly candle, if it has any kind of like hammer candle on the low, and then on the high, I'd be looking for either a tweezer top, a gravestone doji, either a top doji, something like that. So basically just looking at how the candle is forming and waiting for that wick confirmation. Sometimes you can see, like we see here on April 26th and April 29th, These candles do not have wicks, so these are
Right.
very strong bearish candles. But because they are so far out of the lower band, as long as that second candle that was after that would have been pushing back into the band and showing some kind of bottoming candle, like in this case, it's kind of hard to see because the candle is so small, but there is a doji candle here. So we had a strong bearish candle, but then we had a doji. So that doji is kind of telling me that this sell pressure is weakening. So we could have looked to be a buyer around that lower band, and then we could have looked for the ADMA or just some kind of short-term moving average to take that take profit off.
Got it. And the length on the Wick Sniper is a 14 period. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Are you
And basically,
have
what that's doing is go ahead.
I was just going to ask. I see that length often. Can you give us maybe a bit of a background as to why that's the length chosen in this case?
It wasn't anything very specific. I did fully build this indicator when I was scalping Bitcoin back in the day. So I was scalping Bitcoin on a 15-minute, and I noticed that there was just a massive amount of wicks on the 15-minute. There was a lot of algorithms kind of battling each other, and I was trying to figure out why they were trading the way they were trading. So I tried to build a volatility indicator to kind of capture as many of as those wicks as I possibly could. So I just back tested a ton of lengths. I started from like 5, starting very, very low, went all the way up to like 50, and I just kind of honed it into to 14.
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Well, anything else to tell us about the indicator?
That's really it. Like I said, it is designed to be traded on the lower time frames. It will give you a lot more opportunities on the lower time frames. As you can see, sometimes on the daily, it will take a very long time for it to get to the bottom band, to the top band. If you trade it on something more like a 15-minute or a 5-minute or a 30-minute, then you will have a lot more trading opportunities in that time frame. And basically, the formula, it's going to give you the same exact thing on each time frame. It's just looking at the volatility on that time frame and giving you the healthy price action to the high and the healthy price action to the low. So sometimes you can see conflicting evidence where maybe sometimes you're hitting the upper band on the lower time frames, but you're hitting the lower band on the higher time frames. And if something like that is happening, you just have to understand that the higher time frames are always going to have precedence. So make sure you are looking at what the higher time frames are telling you, and you could definitely trade it on a lower time frame if you would like.
That brings into question another brings me to another question. Do you look for multiple time frames all flashing the same kind of signal?
What I try to do is I just try to make sure that I'm trading with the trend as much as I can. So if the higher time frames are all hovering towards the lower band, then that basically tells me that I probably want to be a buyer. So if the 15-minute is hitting the upper band, we could sell that, but we really want to take that opportunity when it's hitting the lower band and giving us the buy signals, because all the other higher time frames are showing us buy signals. So we want to follow along with the higher time frames.
Got it. Awesome, Deja, man. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to walk us through how this indicator works. So thank you so much for being here and explaining it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me.
All right, man. Well, have a great rest of your day. And for all of our TrendSpider users, if you would like to play around with this indicator, just tap on the 3 dots next to the indicator button, search Wick Sniper, and add it to your charts. Thanks a bunch, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you.